Joseph in prison. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt. An Egyptian named Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh and the captain of the guard, purchased him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. The Lord was with Joseph. He was successful, and lived in the household of his Egyptian master. His master observed that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made everything he was doing successful. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and became his personal attendant. Potiphar appointed Joseph overseer of his household, and put him in charge of everything he owned. From the time Potiphar appointed him over his household, and over all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's household for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on everything that he had, both in his house and in his fields. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. He gave no thought to anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well-built and good-looking. Soon after these things, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused, saying to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not give any thought to his household with me here, and everything that he owns he has put into my care. There is no one greater in this household than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So, how could I do such a great evil and sin against God?" Even though she continued to speak to Joseph day after day, he did not respond to her invitation to go to bed with her. One day he went into the house to do his work. When none of the household servants were there in the house, she grabbed him by his outer garment, saying, "Come to bed with me." But he left his outer garment in her hand and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his outer garment in her hand and had run outside, she called for her household servants and said to them, "See, my husband brought in a Hebrew man to us to humiliate us. He tried to go to bed with me, but I screamed loudly when he heard me raise my voice and scream. He left his outer garment beside me and ran outside." So she laid his outer garment beside her until his master came home. This is what she said to him, that Hebrew slave you brought to us tried to humiliate me, but when I raised my voice and screamed, he left his outer garment and ran outside. When his master heard his wife say, "This is the way your slave treated me," he became furious. Joseph's master took him and threw him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. So he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness. He granted him favor in the sight of the prison warden. The warden put all the prisoners under Joseph's care. He was in charge of whatever they were doing. The warden did not concern himself with anything that was in Joseph's care, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he was doing, the Lord was making successful. After these things happened, the cupbearer to the king of Egypt and the royal baker offended their master. The king of Egypt, Pharaoh, was enraged with his two officials, the cupbearer and the baker. So he imprisoned them in the house of the captain of the guard in the same facility where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be their attendant, and he served them. They spent some time in custody, both of them, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream the same night. Each man's dream had its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were looking depressed. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" They told him, "We both had dreams, but there is no one to interpret them." Joseph responded, "Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. "In my dream, there was a vine in front of me. On the vine there were 3 branches. As it budded, its blossoms opened and its clusters ripened into grapes. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes, squeezed them into his cup, and put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. This is its meaning." Joseph said to him, "The 3 branches represent 3 days. In 3 more days Pharaoh will reinstate you and restore you to your office. You will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you did before when you were cupbearer. But remember me when it goes well for you, and show me kindness. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and bring me out of this prison, for I really was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and I have done nothing wrong here, for which they should put me in a dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation of the first dream was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also appeared in my dream, and there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the top basket there were baked goods of every kind for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them from the basket that was on my head. Joseph replied, This is its meaning, the 3 baskets represent 3 days. In 3 more days Pharaoh will decapitate you and impale you on a pole. Then the birds will eat your flesh from you. On the 3rd day it was Pharaoh's birthday, so he gave a feast for all his servants. He lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker in the midst of his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so that he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he impaled, just as Joseph had predicted. But the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, forgot him.
Thank you for watching. God bless you.
Joseph as a ruler. At the end of the full years, Pharaoh had a dream. As he was standing by the Nile, 7 fine-looking, fat cows were coming up out of the Nile, and they grazed in the reeds. Then 7 bad-looking, thin cows were coming up after them from the Nile, and they stood beside the other cows at the edge of the river. The bad-looking, thin cows ate the 7 fine-looking, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. Then he fell asleep again, and had a second dream. There were 7 heads of grain, growing on one stalk, healthy and good. Then 7 heads of grain, thin and burned by the east wind, were sprouting up after them. The thin heads swallowed up the 7 healthy and full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up and realized it was a dream. In the morning he was troubled. So he called for all the diviner priests of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, Today I recall my failures. Pharaoh was enraged with his servants, and he put me in prison in the house of the captain of the guards and the chief baker. We each had a dream one night. Each of us had a dream with its own meaning. Now a young man, a Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guards, was with us there. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted the meaning of each of our respective dreams for us. It happened just as he had said to us. Pharaoh restored me to my office, but he impaled the baker. Then Pharaoh summoned Joseph. So they brought him quickly out of the dungeon. He shaved himself, changed his clothes, and came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard about you, that you can interpret dreams. Joseph replied to Pharaoh, It is not within my power, but God will speak concerning the welfare of Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream I was standing by the edge of the Nile. Then 7 fat and fine-looking cows were coming up out of the Nile, and they grazed in the reeds. Then 7 other cows came up after them. They were scrawny, very bad-looking, and lean. I had never seen such bad-looking cows as these in all the land of Egypt. The lean, bad-looking cows ate up the 7 fat cows. When they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had done so, for they were just as bad-looking as before. Then I woke up. I also saw in my dream 7 heads of grain growing on one stalk, full and good. Then 7 heads of grain, withered and thin and burned with the east wind, were sprouting up after them. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads of grain. So I told all this to the diviner priests, but no one could tell me its meaning. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, Both dreams of Pharaoh have the same meaning. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows represent 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain represent 7 years. Both dreams have the same meaning. The 7 lean, bad-looking cows that came up after them represent 7 years, as do the 7 empty heads of grain burned with the east wind. They represent 7 years of famine. This is just what I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the whole land of Egypt. But 7 years of famine will occur after them, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will devastate the land. The previous abundance of the land will not be remembered because of the famine that follows, for the famine will be very severe. The dream was repeated to Pharaoh, because the matter has been decreed by God, and God will make it happen soon. So now Pharaoh should look for a wise and discerning man, and give him authority over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh should appoint officials throughout the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, they should gather all the excess food during these good years that are coming. By Pharaoh's authority, they should store up grain, so the cities will have food, and they should preserve it. This food should be held in storage for the land in preparation for the 7 years of famine that will occur throughout the land of Egypt. In this way, the land will survive the famine. This advice made sense to Pharaoh and all his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, "Can we find a man like Joseph, one in whom the Spirit of God is present?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Because God has enabled you to know all this, there is no one as wise and discerning as you are. You will oversee my household, and all my people will submit to your commands. Only I, the king, will be greater than you. See here," Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I place you in authority over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his own hand and put it on Joseph's. He clothed him with fine linen clothes and put a gold chain around his neck. Pharaoh had him ride in the chariot used by his second in command, and they cried out before him, "Kneel down." So he placed him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your permission no one will move his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the names Aphanath-Paneah. He also gave him Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, to be his wife. So Joseph took charge of all the land of Egypt. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he began serving Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph was commissioned by Pharaoh and was in charge of all the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced large, bountiful harvests. Joseph collected all the excess food in the land of Egypt during the 7 years and stored it in the cities. In every city, he put the food gathered from the fields around it. Joseph stored up a vast amount of grain, like the sand of the sea, until he stopped measuring it because it was impossible to measure. 2 sons were born to Joseph before the famine came. Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, was their mother. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, saying, "Certainly God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's house." He named the second child Ephraim, saying, "Certainly God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." The 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph had predicted, there was famine in all the other lands. But throughout the land of Egypt there was food. When all the land of Egypt experienced the famine, the people cried out to Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh said to all the people of Egypt, "Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you." While the famine was over all the earth, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. The famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt. People from every country came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was severe throughout the earth.
Thank you for watching. God bless you.
Family reunion. When Jacob heard there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you looking at each other?" He then said, "Look, I hear that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy grain for us so that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, "What if some accident happens to him?" So Israel's sons came to buy grain among the other travelers, for the famine was severe in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was the ruler of the country, the one who sold grain to all the people of the country. Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him, with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger to them, and spoke to them harshly. He asked, "Where do you come from?" They answered, "From the land of Canaan, to buy grain for food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams he had dreamed about them, and he said to them, "You are spies, you have come to see if our land is vulnerable." But they exclaimed, "No, my lord. Your servants have come to buy grain for food. We are all the sons of one man, we are honest men. Your servants are not spies." "No," he insisted. "But you have come to see if our land is vulnerable." They replied, "Your servants are from a family of 12 brothers. We are the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is with our father at this time, and one is no longer alive." But Joseph told them, "It is just as I said to you, you are spies. You will be tested in this way as surely as Pharaoh lives. You will not depart from this place, unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you must go and get your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison. In this way your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If not, then, as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." He imprisoned them all for 3 days. On the 3rd day Joseph said to them, "Do as I say, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, leave one of your brothers confined here in prison, while the rest of you go, and take grain back for your hungry families. But you must bring your youngest brother to me. Then your words will be verified and you will not die." They did as he said. They said to one another, "Surely we're being punished because of our brother, because we saw how distressed he was when he cried to us for mercy. But we refused to listen. That is why this distress has come on us." Reuben said to them, "Didn't I say to you, don't sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. So now we must pay for shedding his blood." Now they did not know that Joseph could understand them, for he was speaking through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept. When he turned around and spoke to them again, he had Simeon taken from them and tied up before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return each man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. His orders were carried out. So they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. When one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey at their resting place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. He said to his brothers, "My money was returned. Here it is in my sack." They were dismayed. They turned trembling to one another and said, "What in the world has God done to us?" They returned to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, and told him all the things that had happened to them, saying, "The man, the lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and treated us as if we were spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men, we are not spies. We are from a family of 12 brothers. We are the sons of one father. One is no longer alive, and the youngest is with our father at this time in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the lord of the land, said to us, 'This is how I will find out if you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for your hungry households and go. But bring your youngest brother back to me, so I will know that you are honest men and not spies. Then I will give your brother back to you, and you may move about freely in the land.' When they were emptying their sacks, there was each man's bag of money in his sack. When they and their father saw the bags of money, they were afraid. Their father Jacob said to them, 'You are making me childless. Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me.' Then Reuben said to his father, 'You may put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my care, and I will bring him back to you.' But Jacob replied, 'My son will not go down there with you, for his brother is dead and he alone is left. If an accident happens to him on the journey you have to make, then you will bring down my gray hair in sorrow to the grave.' Now the famine was severe in the land. When they finished eating the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, 'Return, buy us a little more food.' But Judah said to him, 'The man solemnly warned us, "You will not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we won't go down there, because the man said to us, 'You will not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" Israel said, "Why did you bring this trouble on me, by telling the man you had one more brother?" They replied, "The man questioned us thoroughly about ourselves and our family, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Do you have another brother?' So we answered him in this way. How could we possibly know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Then Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the boy with me, and we will go immediately. Then we will live and not do, and you and our little ones. I myself pledge security for him. You may hold me liable. If I do not bring him back to you and place him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life." But if we had not delayed, we could have traveled there and back twice by now. Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this: take some of the best products of the land in your bags, and take a gift down to them on a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachios and almonds. Take double the money with you. You must take back the money that was returned in the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother too, and go right away to the man. May the sovereign God grant you mercy before the man, so that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, if I lose my children, I lose them." So the men took these gifts, and they took double the money with them, along with Benjamin. Then they hurried down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the servant who was over his household, "Bring the men to the house, slaughter an animal and prepare it, for the men will eat with me at noon." The man did just as Joseph said. He brought the men into Joseph's house. But the men were afraid when they were brought to Joseph's house. They said, "We are being brought in because of the money that was returned in our sacks last time. He wants to capture us, make us slaves, and take our donkeys." So they approached the man who was in charge of Joseph's household and spoke to him at the entrance to the house. They said, "My lord, we did indeed come down the first time to buy food, but when we came to the place where we spent the night, we opened our sacks, and each of us found his money full amount in the mouth of his sack. So we have returned it. We have brought additional money with us to buy food. We do not know who put the money in our sacks. Everything is fine." The man in charge of Joseph's household told them, "Don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. The servant in charge brought the men into Joseph's house. He gave them water, and they washed their feet. Then he gave food to their donkeys. They got their gifts ready for Joseph's arrival at noon, for they had heard that they were to have a meal there. When Joseph came home, they presented him with the gifts they had brought inside, and they bowed down to the ground before him. He asked them how they were doing. Then he said, "Is your aging father well? The one you spoke about, is he still alive?" "Your servant our father is well," they replied. "He is still alive." They bowed down in humility. When Joseph looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, "Is this your youngest brother, whom you told me about?" Then he said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." Joseph hurried out, for he was overcome by affection for his brother, and was at the point of tears. So he went to his room and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out. With composure he said, "Set out the food." They set a place for him, a separate place for his brothers, and another for the Egyptians who were eating with him. The Egyptians are not able to eat with Hebrews, for the Egyptians think it is disgusting to do so. They sat before him, ranged by order of birth, beginning with the firstborn and ending with the youngest. The men looked at each other in astonishment. He gave them portions of the food set before him, but the portion for Benjamin was 5 times greater than the portions for any of the others. They drank with Joseph until they all became drunk. He instructed the servant who was over his household, "Fill the sacks of the men with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack." Then put my cup silver keep in the mouth of the youngest, 1 sack, along with the money for his grain. He did as Joseph instructed. When morning came, the men and their donkeys were sent off. They had not gone very far from the city, when Joseph said to the servant, who was over his household, "Pursue the men at once. When you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Doesn't my master drink from this cup and use it for divination? You have done wrong.' When the man overtook them, he spoke these words to them. They answered him, 'Why does my lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Look, the money that we found in the mouths of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. Why then would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If one of us has it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves.' He replied, 'You have suggested your own punishment. The one who has it will become my slave, but the rest of you will go free.' So each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the man searched. He began with the oldest and finished with the youngest. The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. They all tore their clothes. Then each man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. So Judah and his brothers came back to Joseph's house. He was still there, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, 'What did you think you were doing? Don't you know that a man like me can find out things like this by divination?' Judah replied, 'What can we say to my lord? What can we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has exposed the sin of your servants. We are now my lord's slaves, we and the one in whose possession the cup was found.' But Joseph said, 'Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose hand the cup was found will become my slave, but the rest of you may go back to your father in peace.' Then Judah approached him and said, 'My lord, please allow your servant to speak a word with you. Please do not get angry with your servant, for you are just like Pharaoh.' My lord asked his servants, 'Do you have a father or a brother?' We said to my lord, 'We have an aged father, and there is a young boy who was born when our father was old. The boy's brother is dead. He is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him.' Then you told your servants, 'Bring him down to me so I can see him.' We said to my lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves his father will die.' But you said to your servants, 'If your youngest brother does not come down with you, you will not see my face again.' When we returned to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my lord. Then our father said, 'Go back and buy us a little food.' But we replied, 'We cannot go down there. If our youngest brother is with us, then we will go. For we won't be permitted to see the man's face if our youngest brother is not with us.' Then your servant, my father, said to us, 'You know that my wife gave me 2 sons. The first disappeared, and I said, "He has surely been torn to pieces. I have not seen him since." If you take this one from me too and an accident happens to him, then you will bring down my gray hair in tragedy to the grave. So now, when I return to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with you, his very life is bound up in his son's life. When he sees the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant our father in sorrow to the grave. Indeed, your servant pledged security for the boy with my father, saying, "If I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame before my father all my life. So now, please let your servant remain as my lord's slave instead of the boy. As for the boy, let him go back with his brothers, for how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I couldn't bear to see my father's pain." Joseph was no longer able to control himself before all his attendants. So he cried out, "Make everyone go out from my presence." No one remained with Joseph. When he made himself known to his brothers, he wept loudly. The Egyptians heard it, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers could not answer him, because they were dumbfounded before him. Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now, do not be upset and do not be angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me ahead of you to preserve life. For these past 2 years there has been famine in the land, and for 5 more years there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me ahead of you to preserve you on the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now, it is not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me an advisor to Pharaoh, lord over all his household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Now go up to my father quickly and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You will live in the land of Goshen, and you will be near me, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks, your herds, and everything you have. I will provide you with food there, because there will be 5 more years of famine. Otherwise you would become pariah, your household, and everyone who belongs to you. You and my brother Benjamin can certainly see with your own eyes that I really am the one who speaks to you. So tell my father about all my honor in Egypt, and about everything you have seen. But bring my father down here quickly." Then he threw himself on the neck of his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept over them. After this his brothers talked with him. Now it was reported in the household of Pharaoh, "Joseph's brothers have arrived." It pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, 'Do this, load your animals and go to the land of Canaan. Get your father and your households and come to me. Then I will give you the best land in Egypt, and you will eat the best of the land.' You are also commanded to say, 'Do this, take for yourselves wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives. Bring your father and come. Don't worry about your belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt will be yours." So the sons of Israel did as he said. Joseph gave them wagons as Pharaoh had instructed, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave sets of clothes to each one of them. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver, and 5 sets of clothes. To his father he sent the following 10 donkeys loaded with the best products of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, food, and provisions for his father's journey. Then he sent his brothers on their way, and they left. He said to them, "As you travel, don't be overcome with fear." So they went up from Egypt, and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt." Jacob was stunned, for he did not believe them. But when they related to him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, their father Jacob's spirit revived. Then Israel said, "Enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Jacob sent Judah before him to Joseph to accompany him to Goshen. So they came to the land of Goshen. Joseph harnessed his chariot and went up to meet his father Israel in Goshen. When he met him, he hugged his neck and wept on his neck for quite some time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face, and know that you are still alive."
Thank you for watching. God bless you.
Moses' birth. These are the names of the sons of Israel, who entered Egypt, each man with his household. Entered with Jacob Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. All the people who were directly descended from Jacob numbered 70. But Joseph was already in Egypt, and in time Joseph and his brothers and all that generation died. The Israelites, however, were fruitful, increased greatly, multiplied, and became extremely strong, so that the land was filled with them. Then a new king, who did not know about Joseph, came to power over Egypt. He said to his people, "Look at the Israelite people, more numerous and stronger than we are. Come, let's deal wisely with them. Otherwise they will continue to multiply, and if a war breaks out, they will ally themselves with our enemies, and fight against us and leave the country." So they put foremen over the Israelites, to oppress them with hard labor. As a result they built Pithom, and Ramesses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and spread. As a result, the Egyptians loathed the Israelites, and they made the Israelites serve rigorously. They made their lives bitter by hard service with mortar and bricks and by all kinds of service in the fields. Every kind of service the Israelites were required to give was rigorous. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you assist the Hebrew women in childbirth, observe at the delivery if it is a son, kill him. But if it is a daughter, she may live. But the midwives feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, why have you done this and let the boys live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. For the Hebrew women are vigorous, they give birth before the midwife gets to them. So God treated the midwives well, and the people multiplied and became very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he made households for them. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, all sons that are born you must throw into the river, but all daughters you may let live. A man from the household of Levi married a woman who was a descendant of Levi. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a healthy child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she was no longer able to hide him, she took a papyrus basket for him and sealed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and set it among the reeds, along the edge of the Nile. His sister stationed herself at a distance to find out what would happen to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself by the Nile, while her attendants were walking alongside the river, and she saw the basket among the reeds. She sent one of her attendants, took it, opened it, and saw the child boy crying. And she felt compassion for him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get a nursing woman for you from the Hebrews, so that she may nurse the child for you? Pharaoh's daughter said to her, yes, do so. So the young girl went and got the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, because I drew him from the water.
Thank you for watching. God bless you.
The burning bush. Now Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire. From within a bush he looked, and the bush was ablaze with fire, but it was not being consumed. So Moses thought, I will turn aside to see this amazing sight. Why does the bush not burn up? When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him from within the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. God said, do not approach any closer. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. He added, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a land that is both good and spacious, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the region of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now indeed the cry of the Israelites has come to me, and I have also seen how severely the Egyptians oppress them. So now go, and I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, or that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He replied, surely I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you, that I have sent you when you bring the people out of Egypt. You and they will serve God at this mountain. Moses said to God, "If I go to the Israelites and tell them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what should I say to them?" God said to Moses, "I am that I am." And he said, "You must say this to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "You must say this to the Israelites, 'The Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial from generation to generation. Go and bring together the elders of Israel and tell them, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, appeared to Meth, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I have attended carefully to you, and to what has been done to you in Egypt, and I have promised that I will bring you about of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders will listen to you, and then you and the elders of Israel must go to the king of Egypt and tell him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, not even under force. So I will extend my hand, and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do among them, and after that he will release you. I will grant this people favor with the Egyptians, so that when you depart, you will not leave empty-handed. Every woman will ask her neighbor and the one who happens to be staying in her house for items of silver and gold and for clothing. You will put these articles on your sons and daughters. This you will plunder Egypt. The 10 plagues. The Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard, he refuses to release the people. Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out to the water. Position yourself to meet him by the edge of the Nile, and take in your hand the staff that was turned into a snake. Tell him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to you to say, Release my people, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But until now you have not listened. This is what the Lord has said. By this you will know that I am the Lord. I am going to strike the water of the Nile with the staff that is in my hand, and it will be turned into blood. Fish in the Nile will die. The Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will be unable to drink water from the Nile. Then the Lord said to Moses, Tell Aaron, Take your staff, and stretch out your hand over Egypt's waters, over their rivers, over their canals, over their ponds, and over all their reservoirs, so that it becomes blood. There will be blood everywhere in the land of Egypt, even in wooden and stone containers. Moses and Aaron did so, just as the Lord had commanded. He raised the staff and struck the water that was in the Nile right before the eyes of Pharaoh and his servants, and all the water that was in the Nile was turned to blood. When the fish that were in the Nile died, the Nile began to stink, so that the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. There was blood everywhere in the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts, and so Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he refused to listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had predicted. And Pharaoh turned and went into his house. He did not pay any attention to this. All the Egyptians dug around the Nile for water to drink, because they could not drink the water of the Nile. 7 full days passed after the Lord struck the Nile. Then the Lord said to Moses, Go to Pharaoh and tell him, This is what the Lord has said, Release my people in order, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to release them, then I am going to plague all your territory with frogs. The Nile will swarm with frogs, and they will come up and go into your house, in your bedroom, and on your bed, and into the houses of your servants and your people, and into your ovens and your kneading troughs. Frogs will come up against you, your people, and all your servants. The Lord spoke to Moses, Tell Aaron, Extend your hand with your staff over the rivers, over the canals, and over the ponds, and bring the frogs up over the land of Egypt. So Aaron extended his hand over the waters of Egypt, and frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. The magicians did the same with their secret arts, and brought up frogs on the land of Egypt too. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Pray to the Lord that he may take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will release the people that they may sacrifice to the Lord." Moses said to Pharaoh, "You may have the honor over me when shall I pray for you, your servants, and your people, for the frogs to be removed from you and your houses, so that they will be left only in the Nile." He said, "Tomorrow." And Moses said, "It will be as you say, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs will depart from you, your houses, your servants, and your people, they will be left only in the Nile." Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh. And Moses cried to the Lord because of the frogs that he had brought on Pharaoh. The Lord did as Moses said. Frogs died in the houses, the villages, and the fields. The Egyptians piled them in countless heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them. Just as the Lord had predicted, the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, extend your staff and strike the dust of the ground, and it will become gnats throughout all the land of Egypt." They did so. Aaron extended his hand with his staff. He struck the dust of the ground, and it became gnats on people and on animals. All the dust of the ground became gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. When the magicians attempted to bring forth gnats by their secret arts, they could not, so there were gnats on people and on animals. The magicians said to Pharaoh, "It is the finger of God." But Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he did not listen to them. Just as the Lord had predicted, the Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning, and position yourself before Pharaoh as he goes out to the water, and tell him, 'This is what the Lord has said. Release my people, that they may serve me. If you do not release my people, then I am going to send swarms of flies on you, and on your servants, and on your people, and in your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of flies, and even the ground they stand on. But on that day I will mark off the land of Goshen, where my people are staying, so that no swarms of flies will be there. That you may know that I am the Lord. In the midst of this land, I will put a division between my people and your people. This sign will take place tomorrow." The Lord did so. A thick swarm of flies came into Pharaoh's house, and into the houses of his servants, and throughout the whole land of Egypt. The land was ruined because of the swarms of flies. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, sacrifice to your God within the land." But Moses said, "That would not be the right thing to do. For the sacrifices we make to the Lord, our God, would be an abomination to the Egyptians. If we make sacrifices that are an abomination to the Egyptians right before their eyes, will they not stone us? We must go on a 3-day journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, just as he is telling us." Pharaoh said, "I will release you so that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you must not go very far. Do pray for me." Moses said, "I am going to go out from you and pray to the Lord, and the swarms of flies will go away from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. Only do not let Pharaoh deal falsely again by not releasing the people to sacrifice to the Lord." So Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord. And the Lord did as Moses said, removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and did not release the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and tell him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has said. Release my people, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to release them and continue holding them, then the hand of the Lord will surely bring a very terrible plague on your livestock in the field, on the horses, the donkeys, the camels, the herds, and the flocks. But the Lord will distinguish between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, and nothing will die of all that the Israelites have.'" The Lord set an appointed time, saying, Tomorrow the Lord will do this in the land. And the Lord did this on the next day. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but of the Israelites' livestock not one died. Pharaoh sent representatives to investigate, and indeed, not even one of the livestock of Israel had died. But Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he did not release the people. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Take handfuls of soot from a furnace, and have Moses throw it into the air while Pharaoh is watching. It will become fine dust over the whole land of Egypt, and will cause boils to break out and fester on both people and animals in all the land of Egypt." So they took soot from a furnace and stood before Pharaoh. Moses threw it into the air, and it caused festering boils to break out on both people and animals. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for boils were on the magicians and on all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not listen to them, just as the Lord had predicted to Moses. The Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh, and tell him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has said: Release my people so that they may serve me. For this time I will send all my plagues on your very self, and on your servants and your people, so that you may know that there is no one like me in all the earth. For by now I could have stretched out my hand, and struck you and your people with plague, and you would have been destroyed from the earth. But for this purpose I have caused you to stand to show you my strength, and so that my name may be declared in all the earth. You are still exalting yourself against my people. By not releasing them, I am going to cause very severe hail to rain down. About this time tomorrow, such hail as has never occurred in Egypt, from the day it was founded until now. So now, send instructions to gather your livestock and all your possessions in the fields to a safe place. Every person or animal caught in the field and not brought into the house with hail will come down on them, and they will die. Those of Pharaoh's servants who feared the Lord's message hurried to bring their servants and livestock into the houses. But those who did not take the Lord's message seriously left their servants and their cattle in the field. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Extend your hand toward the sky, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, on people and on animals, and on everything that grows in the field in the land of Egypt." When Moses extended his staff toward the sky, the Lord sent thunder, and hail and fire fell to the earth. So the Lord caused hail to rain down on the land of Egypt. Hail fell and fire mingled with the hail. The hail was so severe that there had not been any like it in all the land of Egypt since it had become a nation. The hail struck everything in the open fields, both people and animals, throughout all the land of Egypt. The hail struck everything that grows in the field, and it broke all the trees of the field to pieces. Only in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, was there no hail. So Pharaoh sent and summoned Moses and Aaron and said to them, "I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are guilty. Pray to the Lord. For the mighty thunderings and hail are too much. I will release you, and you will stay no longer." Moses said to him, "When I leave the city, I will spread my hands to the Lord. The thunder will cease, and there will be no more hail, so that you may know that the earth belongs to the Lord. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear the Lord God." Now the flax and the barley were struck by the hail, for the barley had ripened and the flax was in bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they are later crops. So Moses left Pharaoh, went out of the city, and spread out his hands to the Lord. And the thunder and the hail ceased, and the rain stopped pouring on the earth. When Pharaoh saw that the rain and hail and thunder ceased, he sinned again. Both he and his servants hardened their hearts. So Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he did not release the Israelites. As the Lord had predicted through Moses, the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, in order to display these signs of mine before him, and in order that in the hearing of your son and your grandson you may tell, how I made fools of the Egyptians, and about my signs that I displayed among them, so that you may know that I am the Lord." So Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh and told him, "This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has said, 'How long do you refuse to humble yourself before me? Release my people so that they may serve me.' But if you refuse to release my people, I am going to bring locusts into your territory tomorrow. They will cover the surface of the earth, so that you will be unable to see the ground. They will eat the remainder of what escaped, what is left over for you from the hail, and they will eat every tree that grows for you from the field. They will fill your houses, the houses of your servants, and all the houses of Egypt, such as neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen, since they have been in the land until this day." Then Moses turned and went out from Pharaoh. Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How long will this man be a menace to us? Release the people so that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not know that Egypt is destroyed?" So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go, serve the Lord your God. Exactly who is going with you?" Moses said, "We will go with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, and with our sheep and our cattle we will go, because we are to hold a pilgrim feast for the Lord." He said to them, "The Lord will need to be with you if I release you and your dependents. Watch out, trouble is right in front of you. No, go, you men only, and serve the Lord, for that is what you want." Then Moses and Aaron were driven out of Pharaoh's presence. The Lord said to Moses, "Extend your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come up over the land of Egypt, and eat everything that grows in the ground, everything that the hail has left." So Moses extended his staff over the land of Egypt, and then the Lord brought an east wind on the land all that day, and all night. The morning came, and the east wind had brought up the locusts. The locusts went up over all the land of Egypt, and settled down in all the territory of Egypt. It was very severe. There had been no locusts like them before, nor will there be such ever again. They covered the surface of all the ground so that the ground became dark with them, and they ate all the vegetation of the ground and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Nothing green remained on the trees, or on anything that grew in the fields, throughout the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh quickly summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. So now, forgive my sin this time only, and pray to the Lord your God, that he would only take this death away from me." Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord turned a very strong west wind, and it picked up the locusts and blew them into the Red Sea. Not one locust remained in all the territory of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not release the Israelites. The Lord said to Moses, "Extend your hand toward heaven so that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness so thick it can be felt." So Moses extended his hand toward heaven, and there was absolute darkness throughout the land of Egypt. For 3 days, no one could see another person, and no one could rise from his place for 3 days. But the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, "Go, serve the Lord. Only your flocks and herds will be detained. Even your families may go with you." But Moses said, "Will you also provide us with sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may present them to the Lord our God? Our livestock must also go with us. Not a hoof is to be left behind, for we must take these animals to serve the Lord our God until we arrive there. We do not know what we must use to serve the Lord." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he was not willing to release them. Pharaoh said to him, "Go from me. Watch out for yourself. Do not appear before me again, for when you see my face you will die." Moses said, "As you wish. I will not see your face again." The Lord said to Moses, "I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh, and on Egypt. After that, he will release you from this place. When he releases you, he will drive you out completely from this place. Instruct the people that each man and each woman is to request from his or her neighbor items of silver and gold. Now the Lord granted the people favor with the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, respected by Pharaoh's servants and by the Egyptian people. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has said about midnight. I will go throughout Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt will die. From the firstborn son of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the firstborn son of the slave girl who is at her handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle. There will be a great cry throughout the whole land of Egypt, such as there has never been, nor ever will be again. But against any of the Israelites not even a dog will bark against either people or animals, so that you may know that the Lord distinguishes between Egypt and Israel. All these your servants will come down to me and bow down to me, saying, 'Go, you and all the people who follow you, and after that I will go out.'" Then Moses went out from Pharaoh in great anger. The Lord said to Moses, "Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt." So Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not release the Israelites from his land. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month is to be your beginning of months. It will be your first month of the year. Tell the whole community of Israel, on the 10th day of this month they each must take a lamb for themselves, according to their family, a lamb for each household. If any household is too small for a lamb, the man and his next-door neighbor are too. Take a lamb according to the number of people you will make your count for the lamb, according to how much each one can eat. Your lamb must be perfect, a male. 1 year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You must care for it until the 14th day of this month. And then the whole community of Israel will kill it around sundown. They will take some of the blood and put it on the 2 side posts and top of the door frame of the houses where they will eat it. They will eat the meat the same night they will eat it, roasted over the fire with bread made without yeast, and with bitter herbs. Do not eat it raw or boiled in water, but roast it over the fire with its head, its legs, and its entrails. You must leave nothing until morning, but you must burn with fire whatever remains of it until morning. This is how you are to eat it dressed to travel, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You are to eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. I will pass through the land of Egypt in the same night, and I will attack all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both of humans and of animals. And on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, so that when I see the blood I will pass over you, and this plague will not fall on you to destroy you. When the first attack the land of Egypt, this day will become a memorial for you, and you will celebrate it as a festival too. The Lord you will celebrate it perpetually as a lasting ordinance. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast. Surely on the first day you must put away yeast from your houses, because anyone who eats bread made with yeast from the first day to the 7th day will be cut off from Israel. On the first day there will be a holy convocation, and on the 7th day there will be a holy convocation for you. You must do no work of any kind on them. Only what every person will eat had alone may be prepared for you. So you will keep the feast of unleavened bread, because on this very day I brought your regiments out from the land of Egypt. And so you must keep this day perpetually as a lasting ordinance. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you will eat bread made without yeast until the 21st day of the month in the evening. For 7 days yeast must not be found in your houses, for whoever eats what is made with yeast, that person will be cut off from the community of Israel, whether a resident foreigner or one born in the land. You will not eat anything made with yeast in all the places where you live. You must eat bread made without yeast. Then Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and told them, "Go and select for yourselves a lamb or young goat for your families, and kill the Passover animals. Take a branch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and apply to the top of the doorframe and the 2 side posts some of the blood that is in the basin. Not one of you is to go out the door of his house until morning. For the Lord will pass through to strike Egypt, and when he sees the blood on the top of the doorframe and the 2 side posts, then the Lord will pass over the door, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you. You must observe this event as an ordinance for you and for your children forever, when you enter the land that the Lord will give to you. Just as he said, you must observe this ceremony. When your children ask you, "What does this ceremony mean to you?" then you will say, "It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, when he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt, when he struck Egypt and delivered our households. The people bowed down low to the ground, and the Israelites went away and did exactly as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. It happened at midnight the Lord attacked all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the prison, and all the firstborn of the cattle. Pharaoh got up in the night, along with all his servants and all Egypt, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was no house in which there was not someone dead.
Thank you for watching. God bless you.